Hi everybody, I'm Jman. That's me, the Jman. Today we are playing Gran Turismo Sport, the real driving simulator. Before we race, let's see what God has to say. God said in Genesis 22 verse 12, or possibly an angel, we'll get into this. Anyway, again, Genesis 22:12, he said, "Do not lay your hand on the boy, or do anything to him, for I know now that you fear God, seeing you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me." Genesis 22:12. I know I said that 3 times. It's partly to help me remember. But it's an important verse. It's an important verse for a lot of reasons. One of the reasons that I think that it's an important verse is because it brings me back to Jesus. I say that tongue-in-cheek, but I really do mean that it really does bring me back to Jesus. I'll start there, but I do want to tell the story. Jesus, in John 3:16, Jesus says, "For God so loved the world that he sent his one and only Son." Same word used here, your only Son. So it's that idea that it was the only son of both God and Abraham. Now, not the same son, but it was a father's perspective of their only child. Now, to be fair to Abraham, it wasn't his only son. So we'll kind of start there. See, God told this young man, Abraham, take your wife, Sarai, and leave your country, known as Ur, and I will tell you where to go. And on their way there, they wind up taking his nephew, and they go, and they wind up going to Egypt and all over the place, but they can't have a son all theirself. Now, God says that Lot, his nephew, is not supposed to be his adopted son. So Abraham says, okay. Abram says, okay. And leaves it alone. And then he decides that I've got a servant, I can adopt my servant. And God says, no, you're not going to adopt your servant. So Sarai, his wife, is getting a little frustrated and says, you know what? Why don't you have a child with my maidservant? And that can be your heir if it's a boy. She had a boy named Ishmael. And God said, that's still not the son I'm talking about. That's not who I want you to have as your son. So at about the age of 99, Sarai was about 89, some travelers came to their camp and told them that in a year Sarai would have a child. And she heard it and laughed. And the visitors said, "And you shall name him Isaac," which means laughter. Because they heard. About a year later they came back and Isaac was there. Isaac was growing up and having a birthday party, 2 to 5 birthday party, and Ishmael started to make fun of him and cause problems. And Sarai said, "I've got my child now, you can kick out the woman that you had an affair with," who she encouraged the affair, by the way, and her son, because it's not the son they were promised. They had their promised heir. So he sent Ishmael and Haggai, the mother, out. He said, you guys are gone. Go away. Your son is treating my son poorly. And God rescued that family, and Ishmael himself actually wound up having 12 sons. And Ishmael is where the story of, or not the story, don't say it that way. Ishmael is the father of Muslim, attributed father. But part of that, definitely a large part of that religion, Abraham being the father there as well. So once they left, Isaac continued to grow, and about the age of 13, which would make Abraham about 112, God said to Abraham, I want you to sacrifice your son. Take him to a mountain. I'll tell you what mountain to go to, just like I told you where to live. And you and your son go alone, and you're going to sacrifice your son. So they leave. They tell Sarah, at this point her name is Sarah and his name is Abraham. They are leaving. They're going to go on a camping trip, and they'll be back. They take a servant with them because in case they have to come back alone, need more stuff to carry, stuff like that. It was a wise choice. God said, leave your servant here and continue on to a mountain, and when you get to the top of the mountain, sacrifice your son. So Abraham says to his servant, you stay here, we're going to go up on that mountain and we're going to pray a little bit. You just wait here. They get to the base of the mountain, and Abraham gives Isaac some of the stuff, and Isaac realizes they're going to make a sacrifice. And Isaac says, but if we're going to make a sacrifice, where is the animal for the sacrifice? And Abraham doesn't say anything. He's quiet. They get to the top of the mountain, and that's at the point where Abraham ties up Isaac. The Bible doesn't say whether Isaac fought or argued or asked any questions. It just says that Abraham tied up Isaac, laid him on the altar, raised the knife, and just as his arm started to go down, a voice said, Abraham, stop! Don't harm your boy. I can tell that because you love me, you were willing to sacrifice your child because I told you to, because you trust me and you love me. And that's all I wanted you to do. Now look up. And as Abraham looks up, he sees in the thicket a ram is trapped. He pulls Isaac off of the sacrifice, unties Isaac, ties up, and sacrifices the ram. And Isaac is one of the fathers of Judaism. So, Judeo-Christian, it's all tied up with Abraham. Muslim, Islam, Judaism, Christianity, they all come from Abraham. And that story right there continues to prove to me that as the Bible is being written, it was told as a love story, and as the love story was being written, it was told as a reminder of what God has done, because God sacrificed in a way that nobody else was asked, not asked to, but nobody else did. Abraham got the closest. In fact, as far as God was concerned, Abraham did sacrifice his heir, the one person that God said, I will make you as numerous as the stars, as numerous as the sand in the desert. And then God said, okay, now kill that heir that's going to make you numerous. And Abraham didn't understand. Oh, what? No. Why won't you turn around? I am terrible at this race. I was like, I'll give it a second try, go back in as the Mustang. Almost had it. But that's what God asks of Abraham. Well, this race isn't necessarily over yet, but I don't know that I've got it. God asked Abraham to sacrifice what Abraham held most dear. His son. His heir. His legacy. To Abraham, Isaac was a legacy. Isaac was what was going to make his name last. And God held true to that. Isaac was the legacy that Abraham was looking for. Because Isaac, through Jacob, whose name was changed to Israel, had 12 sons. And those 12 sons were called the 12 tribes of Israel. And Abraham was the father of that nation. Just like he was the father of the nation of Islam. Because of Ishmael having his 12 sons as well. And his 12 tribes. 4th place. Not the best. Was hoping for better. Really was. But it is time to move on. We'll take the money, take the mileage, and we'll come back. Probably just like last time. Or just like this time. And last time. Start off with this one race that we are not doing so well at. And then move on to a different race. And actually move on to a different race. I was going to do a repeat race, but then I thought, nah, let's not do a repeat race. Let's see. We do want to change some of the aspects on the Porsche here, but not too many of the aspects. It'll be okay. So, I want to go back to, for me, this story is God considering the sacrifice that he knows he has to make. I say considering because the law hasn't even been made yet. And so it's kind of, to me, like God is saying, okay, what does it look like to sacrifice my son? Well, this is what happened when Abraham did it. Okay, so what happens when I do it? Well, maybe there's another way. Can I... Same horsepower. Can I create laws that maybe help to prevent me from having to do this, make this sacrifice? The laws didn't work. Can I make my own people so that they can show the world who I am? That didn't work. Because people make mistakes. Because people aren't perfect. I know I'm not perfect. And I don't know if I could do what Abraham did. I mean, I just thinking age-wise, Abraham was 110 plus years old. About, you could say 112, 113 years old. Maybe a little older, probably 111 to 113. Just based on my basic math of Isaac being about 13 when this happened, it just kind of encourages my thinking. And this is probably where the idea of, bar mitzvah comes from. Where at that point, Isaac became a man. Isaac became an adult because he saw the world the way that the world already kind of is. He saw how broken and hurt and damaged the world is because his father was going to hurt him. And I don't know what the relationship was really like between Isaac and Abraham, I know that Isaac still loved his father, and I think that he understood, that he heard the voice talking to them, and that he understood that what his father was doing wasn't out of malice towards him, wasn't because his father was trying to better his own life by harming his son. I think that Isaac saw it for what it was. His father was trying to sacrifice him to the God that he knew. And it's amazing that Isaac still appeared to trust God and trust his father after this. A lot of the time, at least in modern times, if there's a poor relationship between a father and a son, what can wind up happening is, if the father, especially if the father is religious, the son will not want to have any part in the religion that the father has. And Abraham was definitely very religious. But Isaac saw the religion and wound up trusting God and trusting his father. I mean, he trusted his father enough to allow his father to tie him up, lay him on the altar, and even if his father had killed him, trusted God enough to bring him back to life, which you could say that's what God did. God brought Isaac back from the dead, because had he not stopped Abraham from plunging the dagger into him, he would have died. And I think that, for me, I think that it is a good representation of the death of Jesus. It's a lot faster. It's not, there was no actual bloodshed except for the blood of the ram, which wasn't an accident. God planned that. God knew that Abraham was going to be there. God trusted that Abraham would be there, had a ram ready to go as a sacrifice. Now, there's many ways the ram could have gotten there. One, the ram could have already been there, but Abraham didn't see the ram, neither did Isaac, because the sacrifice that Abraham had to make was in the forefront of his mind. But what he did say to Isaac was, God will provide. When Isaac asked, where is the animal for the sacrifice? Abraham said, God will provide. And God did provide. God provided a ram instead of Isaac. Even though God had provided Isaac and told Abraham Isaac was the sacrifice, the plans changed. Now, it's also possible that God placed the ram there after, when he told Abraham to look up, and Abraham then saw the ram. It's possible that that's when God put the ram there. It wasn't that the ram was already there, it was that God added the ram later. I don't know. The scripture doesn't really express when the ram appeared. It just says that there was a ram that God provided. Ooh, wow, my speed. That's cool. Not great. I don't like hitting that Volkswagen. But that's exactly what I thought would happen if I was using that Volkswagen. That green best means that I have the fastest lap beyond Han there. Do I think that it was easy for Abraham to tie up his son? No. Do I think that Isaac allowed Abraham to do it peacefully? No. I think there was probably a fight. I think on the way back down, Isaac and him argued. I could imagine Isaac saying, look, you were actually going to sacrifice me? You couldn't have looked for the ram beforehand? I see so much stuff that's not in Scripture. And by saying that I think this happened, that's wrong, because I am speculating. And since I wasn't there, I can't speculate on it. Do I believe the story was passed down from Isaac to Jacob and Esau? Yes. Do I believe that the story was passed down from Isaac to his 12 sons? Yes. Do I believe that they retold the story to their children? Yes. Partly because that's how stories work. That's not the right way. That's what's called the oral tradition, which we've talked about a little bit, but I'll explain it again, where basically it's just stories were told and retold. And that was before they were written down. That's why they were told, because they weren't written down. Maybe there was no written language yet. Maybe people didn't know how to read yet. Maybe, well, definitely paper wasn't a thing early on. So stories had to be told until paper could come into existence. Because, you know, if you told the story, you chipped it down onto a stone, and then you carried the stone around with you to tell it that way, it doesn't exactly work. And I'm sure that when they got back, Sarah asked, what happened on your camping trip? And I don't think Isaac's going to lie and say, oh, Dad and I, we found this ram, and we sacrificed it, and not tell the whole truth. I think that Isaac and Abraham would say, well, God told me to make a sacrifice, and he told me that the sacrifice had to be Isaac. And would that have made Sarah happy? No. But she couldn't know about it beforehand, so he had to keep it secret. He had to say they were going to go out camping. They were following God, worshiping God. When they got back to the servant asked, what happened? You guys were gone for a little while. And were they going to lie to the servant? I mean, they could have. I guess it wouldn't have been a lie to say, we got to the top of the mountain and there was a ram and we sacrificed the ram. But it's not always, if they told the story that way, then there's the lie of omission. Now, you could still tell the story of we went up to make a sacrifice and God provided so that we could make a sacrifice, and not tell the whole story. But then you have to ask the question of, why did the author decide to tell the story that way then? Because it makes Abraham look bad. It makes you question the relationship between Abraham and Isaac. Did they have a good relationship? Was it a bad relationship? Was Abraham abusive to Isaac? Did Isaac not trust Abraham anymore? There's a lot of questions to be asked here. I don't have any of those answers because the Bible doesn't... Woohoo! We won! Nice! Congratulations! There we go. Okay. Oof, wow! 50,000 credits? Alright. And we won the new car. So, it's a good time for us to stop anyway. Because if I go another race, I'll go a really long time. And I don't want to go too terribly long. But, let's take a look at our car. God provided a new car. Okay, maybe not. We worked. We did our daily workout. And we've got... Ooh... It's got Sky Active technology. So this is a Mazda Atenza GR3. And it is a GR3 in the corner there too. And it looks like a pretty cool race car. With that, I'm going to thank you for watching. I'm going to ask that God bless you. And I'm going to remind you that even if God's not asking you to make a sacrifice, God still loves you. And God wants to know, do you love God?